Former President Lee Myung-bak is invited to the Pyeongchang Winter Games. The formal invitation by the top office comes in spite of the ex-leader's recent verbal attacks against the current administration. Hwang Hojun has the full story.
At least for now, the political animosity between Korea's current president and former President Lee Myung-bak has decreased. Upon President Moon Jae-in's order, the senior presidential secretary for political affairs Han Byung-do visited ex-President Lee Myung-bak's office in Southern Seoul on Wednesday afternoon. He delivered 2 letters of invitation. The first one, from the International Olympic Committee, is to the Pyeongchang 2018 opening and closing ceremonies and major Olympic events. And the second, to receptions and dinners, is from President Moon Jae-in.
Well, I do hope the current government will successfully host the Olympics. There's much I want to say, but since I was invited today, please tell the president that I will positively consider accepting the invitation.
The invitations were made amid an investigation by prosecutors into corruption allegations against Lee. The prosecutors earlier said they will likely summon the former president for questioning once the PyeongChang Olympics comes to an end. Just a few weeks ago, Lee publicly accused the Moon administration, denouncing the ongoing probe against him as political retaliation over the suicide of former President Roh Moo-hyun, who committed suicide during a corruption investigation while Lee was in office. President Moon Jae-in in return said he is infuriated over the former President Lee Myung-bak talking about political retaliation while directly mentioning the death of the late former President Roh Moo-hyun, and that his accusation is an insult to the government. A Blue House official said the invitations were sent out of respect to honor the former president regardless of the situation. In fact, it was under the Lee administration that Pyeongchang won the bidding to become only the 3rd non-European or American host of the Winter Games after losing the bids for the 2010 and 2014 Winter Olympics. However, Lee is the only living former president who got the invitation because the Honorable Treatment of Ex-Presidents Act does not extend to those who have been sentenced to imprisonment or heavier punishment, excluding former presidents Park Geun-hye, Chun Doo-hwan, and Roh Tae-woo from attending. The Blue House said it will also invite the former First Ladies who qualify, namely late President Kim Yong-sam's widow Son Myung-sun, late President Kim Dae-jung's widow Lee Hee-ho, and late President Roh Moo-hyun's widow Kwon Yang-suk. Hwang Hojun, Arirang News.